Workers are facing the biggest cut in living standards on record. No small thanks to a Chancellor of the Exchequer, who is personally the wealthiest MP, with official inflation figures set to rise by 9% in 2022. In reality, it is higher than that for low-income families. It will be the biggest squeeze in living memory. The Office for Budget Responsibility, which is an arm of the government, has warned that living standards will fall in the coming 12 months at the fastest pace on record. According to the OBR, wages will not rise to their pre-pandemic equivalent for at least 2 years. With the exception of a small number of workers whose trade union has fought for them for a decent pay rise, the overwhelming majority of workers, especially those in the private sector, will find that their pay rises are dwarfed by rising costs. The real fall in disposable household incomes will be the biggest in a single financial year since ONS records began in 1956 to 1957. Workers who were clapped as heroes during the COVID pandemic have again been slapped in the face. Chancellor Rishi Sunak has the gall to suggest that his modest changes to fuel duty and a rise in the threshold for paying national insurance will mitigate the cuts in living standards. The cut in fuel duty will not reduce petrol and diesel prices to anything like their previous levels. And many workers rely on their own cars and vans for work. In fact, according to a Snap poll by YouGov, 2/3 of those polled believe these mitigating measures will either not affect them at all, so around 24%, or will not affect them very much at 42%. Sunak claims that he has delivered the biggest net cut to personal taxes in over a quarter of a century. But the Resolution Foundation and the Institute for Fiscal Studies both rejected this lie. The chief executive of the Resolution Foundation told the Financial Times that the Chancellor's changes do not measure up the rhetoric that is certainly the most experienced for most workers. Some academic studies have concluded that working class people in some cases are already in a situation in which they cannot afford to eat, heat their homes at the same time, even before the spring statement. For example, a Northern Irish academic told the Belfast Telegraph, the general assumption had been that those affected by the shocking hike in living costs were in a heat or eat scenario, when the reality is that an increasing number no longer even have that choice. Destitution, he added, is when you can't afford to heat, eat, or maintain basic hygiene. And so many people here are at that point already. People won't be able to put a meal on the table or turn on the lights. This is a government which puts food banks and soup kitchens at the very heart of its economic and social strategy. John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn used to repeat that Tory austerity is a political choice and not an economic necessity. It certainly looks that way, but we also need to remember that Sunak is the political representative par excellence of his class. Those who own and control the main levers of the economy, industry, transport, land, the energy sector, in finance and in banking. He and the rest of the Tory cabinet are the custodians of an economic system that is based on the greed and enrichment of a tiny minority. And austerity, from their point of view, is imperative. It is a means of shifting wealth and income. But unfortunately, the policy of the Labour leadership is not to stop austerity, but only to soften the cuts and appear a bit better than the Tories. In her message to Labour members, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves made the point that Sunak could have introduced a windfall tax on oil and gas producers to provide real help to families. Those who have the broadest shoulders should pay their fair share. This is true. But she also is doing exactly what she's accusing the Tories of doing, underestimating the scale of the damage being done to working class families. By the broadest shoulders, Reeves unfortunately does not mean bankers, millionaires, and other tax dodgers, but workers who might be slightly better off. This is the crisis of an economic system, not just a matter of misjudgment or incompetence by Sunak. No minor changes will alter the fact that it is British capitalism and not just the Tory cabinet that is responsible for the drive to impoverish the majority of the population. Sunak and Johnson may be corrupt and incompetent, but they are also following the logic of a system whose only resort is to profit by slashing the living standards of the majority. Workers are going to have to fight on two fronts against the poverty being foisted on them from above. The trade unions and above all, the leadership must adopt a fighting militant approach to all attempts to reduce workers' wages and conditions by the terrible fire and rehire, and must rigorously pursue a policy that wins pay rises at least equivalent to the rises in the cost of living. If that means breaking the anti-union laws, then so be it. The strength of the trade union movement has always rested on its membership and not on its bank accounts. But the active membership of the Labour movement also has another fight on its hands. To win back the Labour Party from its current Tory-light leadership, to policies and a programme that are genuinely in the interest of working class people. That means an unqualified defence of living standards, not merely softening the cuts. It must be policies of public ownership and a planned economy that can provide the economic basis for it. So in Left Horizons, we have a few key concrete demands that must be met, in which the Labour movement and the working class and trade unions can adhere to. No cuts in living standards. Wages rises to match living costs. Abolish universal credit. A living wage for those on benefits. An immediate rise in the national minimum wage to £15 an hour. An end to fire and rehire. A defiance to anti-Tory laws. We must fight back, comrades. We can and we will win.